Hi there, Nancy Mueller here with another Life is All About Choices. And I have a fabulous guest for you today. And before you go anywhere, we're going to be talking about the big question, why aren't you having sex every day? Here to talk about that, here to explain more about that is my beautiful, wonderful guest, Sandra. Sandra, welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm so happy that you're here.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Nancy. Thank you.
Sandra, before we go any farther, can you tell everybody who you are, what you do, and why you're so fabulous?
Well, I'm living in Sedona, Arizona, which is a very powerful energy spot on the planet. And I was called here about 5 years ago to further anchor in the work that I'm supposed to be doing on the planet, which is helping people to work through certain traumas that often happened when they were children, when they were in the womb space, even a time before conception. So for some people, that could be past lives, and even, you know, traumas that they are not aware of, but that they're bringing from their ancestral lineage or something that has been passed on from generation to generation. And I love our title today, Why Are You Not Having Sex Every Day? Because that's a question that I often ask people, just to kind of pierce a little bit deeper into what is going on. Is something blocking you in your life? Is there something that is hindering a natural flow of creativity and sensuality? Because when I ask the question, why are you not having sex every day, doesn't necessarily mean pure physical contact, intercourse with a partner.
Right.
It's how do you approach life? How open are you? How vibrant do you feel? Because when we look at the energy centers in the body, where our sexuality is situated is also where all of our creativity lies. And when I'm talking to women, excuse me, my alarm is going off.
Time for us to get together.
Yes. Yeah. So when we talk about, you know, the exact physical location in our physical bodies, when I'm referring to women, but also to men, is where life is created. So where we can birth new things into being, and that doesn't necessarily need to be a baby. It could be a new project. It could be an idea, a vision that you have in the world.
Right. I often refer to writing a book as a birthing process. You know, you're putting so much work and energy into writing the book. And then when you write the book, and publish it, it's the birth of the book. And then everything that comes after that. I think that's an excellent way to describe it in my experience, because that is what it feels like. You have this material that you're creating in the same way as you're creating life inside of you, and to think of it as a birthing process. And now that it's here, what are you going to do with it? How are you going to keep going and keep sharing and nurturing this beautiful gift that you have? And I have to say that you since we first talked a couple of weeks ago, I have been listening to a lot of your YouTube channel meditations, some of them more than once. And I don't know if it's your voice, your accent, the content, all of it rolled into one, but they are beautiful, they're powerful, they're uplifting, they're thought-provoking. And I, for one, really appreciate that you are offering those beautiful full-length meditations on your website or on your YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's one of my passions, because there's a lot of men and women. I know that some of my videos are more focused for women, but a lot of them are also for men. And there's so many people on the planet that do not have the opportunity to attend the workshop for whatever reason. Maybe they don't have the financial ability to do so, or the time to take time off from their family or their jobs, or travel long distance. So it's really important to me to continue to offer those free guided sessions, because it is like you are having a session with me, and I approach it as if you're paying top dollar for precious time that people put into private sessions, all of us light workers that offer private sessions. And that's what I want people to feel, that there's somebody there that's holding that space for them.
Well, I definitely feel that. And I wanted to just, for anyone watching this conversation, definitely check out her YouTube channel because, oh my goodness, so powerful. So
Do you have a favorite?
I really enjoyed the whole Opono,
Mm,
and I've listened to that several times. It's the way that you just say, I'm sorry, please forgive me. And you just, I don't know, there's just something about it that by the time it's over, you're so relaxed and so in love with yourself and so feeling connected to yourself. And that's been my favorite. That one has been my favorite.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's like an act of self-love and self-compassion.
Mm.
And that specific one that you talk about is the Ho'oponopono for deep self-love and radical self-forgiveness, which was birthed into being after I went through a very intense process of understanding that I had given away my power so many times in my life. And at a point where I was ready to set some healthy boundaries and to really step onto a new timeline, like, okay, this was the old me, but that was never the real me. That was just a bunch of layers of trauma and all kinds of stuff that happened that I had to work through, to then take off those layers and be like, who am I really? What do I really want in life? And when I reached that point where I was really ready to step onto that new timeline, I had some serious self-forgiveness to do because a lot of shame and guilt came up for not taking better care of myself. And that's where that whole session was created inside of me. So I think that when people step into the session, they feel that it comes from a deep place inside of me. And I must say that that specific session, I have listened to it myself many, many times as a self-healing tool. And many times tears would just flow out of me. And with the tears, also there's a release of shame and guilt and a deeper self-love. And that's also what I see in the comments that people put on to that specific video. And it's gone quite viral.
It has.
It's now almost up to 600,000 views in a couple of months' time. So it just shows that a lot of people are ready to take it to this next level, because we need to forgive ourselves to step into our own power, to step onto a new timeline, to take it to the next level.
Absolutely. And life is all about choices. These conversations are always with someone who has gone through some type of a dark night of the soul and come through it and come out on the other side and are now using what they've experienced to help empower, inspire, and motivate others. Can you talk a little bit about your dark night of the soul that led you to do this work that you're doing?
Absolutely. And I feel it was multiple dark nights of the soul, starting from when I was a baby. But it was the one that when I was in my early 40s, mid 40s, that really like shut me completely down. I really was in a position of, okay, I really hit rock bottom. Everything that I thought was working for me or that I wanted, that I aspired in my life, it is just backfired so badly. This is not who I really am. I've sold myself out. I haven't been true and authentic to myself. And it was really one of those moments where the old part of me really died.
Mm-hmm.
And in our human minds, we often then think like, okay, this is the end of my life. And that's where I think some people go into suicidal thoughts.
Right.
And I had it myself. And something was pulling me through that. And I'm going to fast forward a little bit, because after doing a lot of work on inner child and working with timeline reimprinting, which is something that I also do at my retreats, I realized that it was actually me from the future working with my younger self, and that could just be a year or 2 years time difference, or it could be 20 years or 30 years, however far you want to go, that was telling me, come on, you can do it. And this is a new beginning, because every death, every ending is also a new beginning. And for me, it was in the area of self-worth, self-love, boundaries, giving my power away. And my most powerful catalyst in my life up until now has been relationships. And that started with being the baby of a teenage mother and father. And I always say my soul really wanted to come in. And I even had to do some forgiveness work where I felt that at a certain level, I kind of disturbed my mother and father's life by coming in so early. So that's also where Ho'oponopono comes in very strongly, to do that forgiveness work, because we all on a soul level make certain agreements, and we come in, and sadly enough, we forget about most of it.
Right.
Caught up in this illusion of life, like, oh my God, we're powerless and we can't do anything. But if we look at it from a higher perspective, we come in to learn so many lessons, and there's so many opportunities. And I've definitely been on a fast track and on the fast lane, and I'm starting to enjoy it now. I can see the humor in it. I can see it like, okay, it's happening. And yesterday I was at a party with some local women that are all light workers here in Sedona. And the similarities of all the women, all the stories were very, very much alike. And just a little small piece of it was, we've been talking for decades about going with the flow and surrendering. And it's as if only just now, a couple of months ago, we've really understood the true meaning of it and are actually putting it into practice.
That's very beautiful. And I can feel it when you're talking. And I like what you said about the future self, talking to the younger self and saying, come on, you can do this, and pulling yourself forward. Because I've thought a lot about from the now self working with the younger self, but hadn't really considered the future self pulling the now self or the child self forward. And that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, it's super powerful. It's really super powerful. I do it a lot at retreats, and it's amazing, because then you, in the sharing circle, the stories that come up, and I haven't met anybody that wasn't able to connect to their future self. And, you know, there's infinite timelines, and every choice we make in the now moment, because when we tap into let's say a version of us 5 years or 10 years into the future, and we tap into, wow, that being has done tremendous personal work and has really been diligent, and feeling the level of self-love and dedication to just being happy and being in the present moment. When we can tap into that, that gives us hope.
It does.
But then it's like, in the moment, every choice we make in the now moment decides if we are going to reach that future self next week, 30 years, or never.
Right. Exactly.
So it's still always we have free will in the now moment. But it's so fun to tap into the different timelines and to see the possibilities, because that's with a lot of people, and I work with a lot of women, is just having this fit, because when we go deep into a session and we tap into the future self, you actually can feel it. All of your senses are activated. So it's a very holistic experience where you can tap into a possibility, and then actually feeling it is very powerful. Like, wow, that is one of the choices out there. That's one of the opportunities, one of the possibilities.
Yes, then you start to say, I can choose that, instead of sadness, grief, shame, guilt, any of those lower energy feelings that we choose to feel.
Yeah, and it's usually fear that's holding us back, and it's normal. I mean, there's so many things that we're programmed to be fearful of. And it's usually in the lower energy centers, where it has to do with your basic safety and security. and
Mhm.
just go back a few generations. That's why I love the transgenerational and ancestral work that we do. Just go back a few generations, the rights that women had or the choices they felt they had. Sometimes you only have to go back 2 generations depending on, your age. And even if we look at our mothers, they felt more stuck than we did in most cases.
Or just watch a period piece movie of women in the 1800s or early 1900s.
Yeah.
I mean, when we look at what they were living with and dealing with, and the suppression today, when you look at that, it's almost laughable. I mean, we would tend to
Yes.
go, "Are you kidding me? I would never stand for that."
Yes.
But that's because you can't think about yourself being back then. You can only
Yes.
think of how things are today. But giving yourself the opportunity to go back and look at those, it really does give you some different perspective of where you are now and where you can be in the future.
Yes. And every woman, any every generation of women that came before us were trailblazers in their own way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's to honor them for the steps that they could take, because sometimes it was very little that they could do, but they still kept going. And
Right.
that's why young women nowadays, young girls, have such a different opportunity
They
than say
absolutely
100 years ago. And it also depends on which part of the world you live in, because I must say that we are still a minority, because there's still a lot of places in the world where women do not have the same rights. And I just want to say that I'm not against the men, because the men were programmed as well. So
Yeah.
both the men and the women are just working through the programming. And I have worked with a lot of women that live in India as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I can also see that, and this is just my perspective of it. It feels like it's 100 years back into the future, where maybe my great grandparents or grandparents were working through. So, but the women there are ready to make a shift. So you can see there's a collective energy going on as well. And I do feel that every part of the world that does their own work is helping the collective.
Well, and I feel that every woman who is willing to do the inner work and do the work on herself, she also inspires, motivates, and empowers the men in her life. Because as we are more able to share our needs and what we want and what we expect and what we deserve, and feel that we're getting all of that, we're actually showing, teaching, empowering the men how to make that happen for us.
Yes, absolutely. And don't forget that most men got their very first relationship with a woman was their mother. So the programming of their mother, how their mother and father were relating to each other, has a big impact on everybody.
Absolutely.
The just working on the childhood part and what was going on at the moment of conception, what was the zeitgeist at that moment, what was
Mhm.
going on in your family, what was the relationship between mother father, what was mother feeling, because the baby gets all of those impressions when it's in the amniotic fluid. And you probably heard of Dr. Emoto's work, where he does studies on the water.
Right.
And I think it's fascinating that when babies are in the womb, they're in the water. So there's an amplification of energies and emotions that baby is bombarded in the womb.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So now let's go back a little bit to the topic that we gave this conversation. And if you will, let us know like how you chose the topic and why you think it's relevant and how you feel it's helping um, women go forward.
I think it's an important question, like, why are you not having sex every day?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's already divided in two groups, because some women might say, I'm not in a relationship. Or some men might say, because this is not just for women, I'm not in a relationship, so how can I have sex every day unless it's casual sex or one night stands or whatever? So just stepping away from that, let's just say you're in a situation where you're not in a relationship. That's already an indicator of what is stopping you, what kind of fear is there, or what kind of restriction is there to step into a relationship. And maybe it's because there's a trust issue. Maybe you don't trust yourself stepping into a relationship. And I'm talking from a very personal point of view, because that's what was actually going on with me. I would do most of my personal work when I was not in a relationship. I would step into a relationship and slowly saw myself morphing into this gigantic people pleaser. And just by the end of the relationship, I was not the same person that stepped into the relationship. So on a certain level, you could say I did not trust myself to step into a relationship, because I knew I wasn't able to work with boundaries. I didn't have enough self-esteem or self-worth. Now, if you are in a relationship and you're not having sex every day, it might be and it's usually something that goes way deeper. Do I feel supported? Do I feel connected? Because true connection and true support, it doesn't happen in the bedroom. It starts somewhere else. It
Right.
starts by having open communication and feeling that the partner, if it's a man or a woman, whatever, is actually there for you, that you feel seen, that you feel heard, that you feel respected. So there's so many, this is like a whole book
Yes.
onto itself, is like, why are you not having sex every day? And when we step away from the physical aspect of it, you could be having a relationship with nature. I've had experiences going to, I'm just going to give the example of going to Mount Shasta and being on Panther Meadows. And for anybody that's ever been to Mount Shasta and has connected with the energy on Panther Meadows, they'll know what I'm talking about. There's something magical about that energy. And I've had moments where I sat for a couple of hours in nature, just touching a leaf or the grass and feeling the energy, the creative energy of the earth, just communicating. But there's so many places. Even if you live in a city, you can go to a park and just try to connect with nature. And I feel it is on a deeper level, it is connected to our true nature.
Mm-hmm.
So when we are able to reconnect with the earth, wherever we live, in a city, or we live in the countryside, or we live in a beautiful vortex energy spot like I do, it's just reconnecting with nature, because that's where so many answers and so much healing will come from. Even if you don't listen to any meditation, you don't do any retreats, any workshops, you just sit in nature and you reconnect to Mother Earth. And I feel also Mother Earth is calling us all back to reconnect with her. That's why it's an important component in my guided sessions that I offer for free on YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
is that reconnection, grounding ourselves. Because a lot of people that are maybe diagnosed as highly sensitive people, or people that are light workers or empaths, when we're not grounded, we're very susceptible for other energies to come and bounce us around, and we feel like we're taking on the pain of the world.
Right.
When we can ground and we can connect to the earth is going to help us to flush. We can still feel the emotions, because if you're a feeling person, it's not about becoming a robot and not feeling.
Mm-hmm.
But it is about, how do we deal with the emotions and the energies that come to us? How do we transmute them? How do we work with them? So those are a few examples of the deeper laying question. And for any person listening, this will be a different answer. Why are you not having sex every day? But it is an invitation to go deeply within and to see where you've lost connection, where you don't feel supported. And it doesn't necessarily need to come from another person or from your partner. It
Correct.
could be, where have I forsaken myself? Where
Yes.
have I let myself just unsupported, unconnected? Or it could be to the earth. It could be just going back into nature.
And likewise, I think you can look at it the other side, someone who is having actual physical sex every single day. but they're still feeling a void or empty. They feel like they're giving, 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 and not getting anything in return. There's no reciprocity there. Do you want to talk to that?
Yes, absolutely. Because the disconnect, again, it's like a disconnection. If you could have sex every day and not feel supported, not feel connected, and
Right.
it's almost like we compartmentalize our life.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's my body in some cases, and in some marriages or relationships, it's a sense of survival or
Duty.
duty, yes, or whatever was programmed
Mm-hmm.
into them. So it's, I think the most important thing is to do the self-inquiry. Like if you are having sex every day, then the next question would be, why are you having sex every day?
Mm-hmm.
What's the reason behind it? What's your motivation? And
So,
these are very deep questions, and not, maybe not everybody is ready to go so deep. So everybody has to take time, be gentle with themselves to reach deeper levels and deeper layers of this self-discovery and self-inquiry, so that we can be more conscious and aware when we do share our energy with other people. Because even cooking a meal for somebody could
right.
could be because it's creativity and you put your love in the food. It's almost like you're having sex with the food and with the ingredients, and you're creating something that is delicious.
Yes. Something you're taking internally, that energy.
Yeah.
And then I often think about, you know, being very selective on where you eat out, because are you going someplace where it's not very, the food isn't very nourishing, it's not nourishing to your body, it's a toxic atmosphere. All of these things matter based on what you are giving your body for nourishment and taking in internally.
Yes. And that leads me to another question is, with a lot of clients, I tell them when they're, some people are like, where do I start? And I would be like, okay, let's start with something very simple. Every choice in your life, ask yourself, is this toxic or is this nourishing?
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not 100% sure that it's nourishing, then it's probably toxic.
Right.
Just to bring in some discernment of how we spend our time, our energy, who we spend our resources with, which could mean a lot of things. So yeah, but I think it's exciting. I think it's exciting to ask ourselves all of these deeper questions and become aware of where we're not in a compartmentalized way living our lives, and everything that we've been programmed with from the media and from our ancestral lineage, and just taking our power back. Slowly it's happening. It's like people are stepping into a new state of self-empowerment, step by step.
And what I hear you saying goes a lot to beliefs. We come into this world as a baby, and everything that we're taught to believe is true or must do or must have is based on a belief that someone else had and taught us. So as you get to a certain point, how would you suggest to someone who's listening to this conversation and trying to determine within their own life how they can start turning things around? Where would you suggest they start?
Well, you have to go to the root cause. You have to go to the seed event. And if you research a little bit, then you will understand why we need to go back so far, because a lot of our beliefs are programmed pre-verbally.
Mm.
And when we are between the ages of 0 and 7, our wave our brain operates on a completely different brainwave level. And then kind of from 6 to 12, it's kind of a different brainwave level. But especially from 0 to 6 or 7, we are almost in like a hypnotic state. And Dr. Bruce Lipton has many beautiful videos about this. So if people are interested in this, He has done an amazing job in explaining this. So the research is out there. And because of the state that we are receiving information, things we see, things that are done to others, things that are done to us, what we're seeing going on in the world is already programming us. But it's on such a deep subconscious level that we can say when we're adults, oh, this is a limiting belief and this is not healthy for me. But on a conscious level, we cannot access that information that was already programmed on much deeper levels. And I like to use the example of a computer that if you're installing new programs or new downloads, you have to look at the space you have and what is already on that computer that might be slowing down that computer, and you might have to remove some of the old programs. But sometimes there's a virus in there, and it's not going to be on your desktop that says, hey, I'm right here, please remove me. You'll have to dig a little bit deeper, and sometimes you'll need the help of a professional to actually find it because you don't have the tools to deal with it. And then I like to use the example of the wastebasket, that when you drag all of the files that, oh, I don't need them anymore, they're still in that wastebasket. They're not gone. And then there's a conscious decision. You click on it and it says, are you sure you want to permanently delete these files? And then you have to click yes or no. So again, that's our in the moment decision. And maybe we need to do that every day. Every day we need to ask ourselves, when we see the old patterns coming up, in the beginning, it might be researching, like, what are the programs that were installed inside of my deep subconsciousness when I was a baby, when I was in my mother's womb, when I was a child growing up, anything before the age of 12, what was installed inside of me? And then you can say, do I still want to hold on to that or not? But then the process of removing it is not just some wishful thinking and a little affirmation. It's going to ask for some determination and some diligence, and maybe every day making that conscious decision of, do I want to delete it? Yes or no. Do I want to hold on to it? Yes or no. And then you start recognizing the patterns. And that's, I feel, is a sign that you're doing the work, is you start catching yourself. Oh my God, I did it again. And then being gentle with yourself, forgiving yourself, but making a day-to-day commitment of letting go of something that is really no longer in your highest benefit.
And when you start to become, I call it self-directing, because you're now noticing, you're now aware that you are making these decisions. Another thing is to know that no one else can do it for you. And that's the beauty in this work, is when you get to a point where you realize, okay, some changes have to be made. And yes, I can look to other people for guidance, but you look to them for guidance, not to do it for you. You know, you can't go to someone and say, okay, I need you to fix me. It doesn't work like that. And everything is a practice. Practice means you do it every day, every day, every day. You just never stop. If you want to play the piano, you know, just like that joke, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, practice, practice.
Oh, yeah.
So what is your Carnegie Hall? You know, what is that thing that you're aspiring towards, that you want to go towards, and how do you practice getting there every single day?
Really good points, because I do feel that we are on a cusp of big shifts where people are stepping into self-empowerment, because we come from an era where we are giving our power away to healers and shamans, and it's literally like, please help me, heal me. And everything has its place, but I do feel that the ones that are ready to serve humanity, they are shifting with humanity, and they're actually stepping into a more self-empowering way of helping people and helping people to heal. So, and that is where self-esteem comes in as well. Because if you go, let's say 50 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, you would go to any type of healer and you would be like, please heal me. You would put yourself in a position of codependency to a certain extent, because you would need that healer to come and do that over and over and over again.
Right.
But that was maybe all you could handle in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
But I do feel that we're stepping into a new dimension, into a new energy, where yes, there are still people there that are helping us to, let's say, clear our field or kind of reset a certain template. But then it's like, come on, we have to take self-responsibility. We cannot be pointing fingers at other people anymore. It's time to take back that power and be fully responsible for who we let into our lives, who we spend time with. And if we don't feel supported, to actually really look at it and be honest with ourselves. Is this any type of relationship? This could be your job, this could be with family, this could be with a lover or a partner, a family member. Just looking at it, is this nourishing, or is this detox? Is this toxic, or is this nourishing?
Mm-hmm. And along with that, it's also when you ask yourself, are you looking to another person to validate you, to give you your self-worth? Well, if this person didn't say exactly X, Y, or Z today, you're feeling down on yourself. So
Yeah.
when are you giving your power away by expecting your validation, your self-worth to be expressed through another person? When you're doing that, there's still so much opportunity for us to take that power back and learn to do the internal work and go within and discover who we are and the path that we're on to pull forward.
Mm-hmm. And this is something that's going on collectively as well. Because again, if we go back a few generations, where did self-esteem come from for maybe our parents, our grandparents, or great-grandparents? A lot of the time, self-esteem would come from, what do the neighbors think of me? What do the people in the village think of me? What type of car do I own? What kind of job title do I have? Who am I married to? What is my status in life? Are my children well behaved? What will people think of me?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a total shift that's going on. And I can see that, let's say, the young people now, I have 2 boys, and one is 23 and the other one is 20. They're not at all interested in the same things that even I was interested in. They're not necessarily interested in owning a car.
Mm-hmm.
So all of a sudden, this status symbol of, oh, I'm driving a specific type of car, so people will value me
Right.
for the car that I'm driving, is already, because of the new generations coming in, is like, it's kind of falling away. And these young people are talking about sharing cars, and Uber and Lyft are just symbols of how the collective is changing. And even, you probably have some examples in your life where you're completely different than your parents or your grandparents, and what you think, where your self-esteem is coming from. So it's collectively we're moving through that, and a lot of stuff is shifting. And I do feel that we're all working towards the point where self-worth, self-respect, self-esteem is truly coming from the inside. And that's where we can set standards for other people coming into our lives. Because if we don't love ourselves, if we don't respect ourselves, people pick up on that energy. And that is where we feed other people's shadow sides as well. Because I love to work with the archetypes. So
Right.
every archetype that we have in ourselves, and we have a whole collection of archetypes. Every individual has his own very specific collection of archetypes. And that's what a catalyst in life is, in our relationships. That's when we step into relationship, whatever type of relationship it is, these archetypes start to activate each other. And it could be activating the light aspect, but it could also, and in most cases, activate the shadow aspect. So in some relationships, when you have the child archetype and it is your wounded child archetype, there will be a lot of opportunity for your wounded child shadow aspect that maybe felt abandoned or not loved or whatever it is, to come up to the surface in an existing relationship that is actually just triggering something really old.
How do you help someone determine? I would feel, and I could be wrong, but I would believe that someone who is coming to you to work with you has a certain knowledge about the responsibility that they must take on for the work that you're going to be doing with them. So that being said, how would you guide someone to take a look at where they're not taking full responsibility in their life?
It's a good question. And I think that is going to be different for each individual.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why there's a certain formula where we really go back to the seed events and
Mm-hmm.
to the root causes, because a lot of the times, if you are going into that very first belief of I'm not worthy, I feel separated, I do not feel supported, all the other things that might have happened in their life are just byproducts of that original thought, that original programming that was actually faulty.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that would be the most powerful thing, is to go back as far as possible. And for some people, that is going back to another lifetime, or to their time in the womb with their mother, or the time when they were born, because a lot of stuff happens to a baby when it comes into the world, and how the birthing process takes place, and the first interactions with the mother and the father. and that,
Absolutely.
and that sets the foundation, like the template of how do we look at relationship.
Absolutely. You know, it's so, if you're not taught to look at these patterns, then you can become your adult self and be in a relationship, and the patterns start all over again, but you don't recognize them as patterns because you're in a different environment with a different person. And it takes really being able to step back and take 100% responsibility for every choice you make, every thought you think, every word you speak, every feeling that you have, taking ownness of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And understanding where your beliefs come from.
And sometimes it's enough to look at your birth story and to see certain things, and then just have that epiphany of like, oh my God, I have been replaying my birth story over and over and over again. Same script, different players, different settings, different locations, but the energy is just exactly the same.
Absolutely. Now, when you're talking about your birth story, are you talking about having a conversation with your parents, like, hey, tell me what happened in the delivery room, that type of thing?
Yeah, I have a whole questionnaire that I give to my clients, and some people do not get those answers from the parents, because either they don't have a relationship with the parents anymore, or the parents are deceased, or in some cases they are demented, and they just can't ask them any questions. But even that is an indicator, like, I don't know nothing about it, and that could be something that is like, oh wow, yeah, that's a lot of the time in my life I get no answers. Nobody tells me anything.
Exactly.
So it's yeah, and it's a process, because a lot of the times when they do have the conversation, mainly with the mother, I must say, they get to know their mother in a different way. They get to have a different and deeper conversation as well, which could be healing in its own,
Mm-hmm.
or bring some closure.
We don't often think about our parents going through any part of their life like we're going through our life. Instead, we tend to look at them in a judgmental way, or why did you do this, or if you had done this, this could have been different. So there are a lot of people who create beliefs in childhood and bring them with them into adulthood, and they're walking around as their adult self making decisions that they made in childhood, and they don't understand why their life is out of balance.
Mm-hmm. And as a child, you you just assume that grown-ups know everything.
Exactly.
And when you get yourself, I mean, I'm like 50 and I'm like, oh my God, I'm still learning every day. Why would I ever think that back in the day, a 20-year-old or a 30-year-old would have all the answers? And so one of the free sessions on YouTube, which I would recommend to people that are struggling with this, where there's judgment towards the parents, because a lot of the times it's resentment and judgment towards one or both of our parents or caretakers. Because like in my case, I was raised by my grandparents. So there's two layers to that. It's
Mm-hmm.
not just mother, father. It's also like, okay, the grandmother and the grandfather were also taking on the parental roles. I created a session, and it's on the YouTube channel. It's called Mini Ancestral Healing, but it's just a healing for mother and father, or at least the people that raised you. So you could do it in whatever way. Maybe you were adopted, or maybe you were in an orphanage and there were some people taking care of you that you kind of saw as the mother and father figure. So it doesn't matter if it's your biological mother or father. But I think that's one of the things. If we want to heal our relationships, if you're a woman and you want to have a better relationship with men, look at your relationship with your father. If you want to have better relationships as a woman with other women, look at the relationship you have with your mother. And that goes for both genders, looking at both, what's my relationship with my mother and my father. And that will give you a lot of insight on why all your other relationships maybe have a certain dynamic.
Right. And what are you still holding against them or blaming them for?
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe.
And during the session, what it's not to say that some people haven't had very horrific situations happen with caretakers. I'm not saying that, but it does help you to look a little bit deeper on why did they do it, and why were they the way they were, and what formed their personality and their character, and what was the dynamic between because sometimes the dynamic between two people creates a different dynamic than when you're just with one person.
Yeah.
So there's so many layers to it.
That's why you can have 5 siblings grow up in the same house and everyone have a different experience of their childhood.
Oh yes. And they do,
Mm-hmm.
because and again, I'm going back to the archetypes, because every person has a unique collection of archetypes that is playing and that gets activated by the archetypes in the other person. So again, yeah, you can have 10 children and they will all have a very unique relationship dynamic with the mother and the father.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Sandra, this has been such a powerful conversation. I really, really appreciate you being here with me and just bringing to light what you've brought to light. It's so, I keep using the word power and empowering, but that's what I'm feeling. Very full and thankful and blessed. And I really, really appreciate you in my life, as well as the work that you're doing for others.
Oh, thank you. And all the work that I'm sharing has come from my self-healing path. And if people are interested in a nutshell, learning about, what I went through, then I would refer them to the Trailblazer book, because my chapter in the book Trailblazers talks exactly about how I came to this point where I want to be of service to others.
Yes, it's a beautiful book, but with 27 authors, co-authored by 27 different authors, where the women in the book shared their story, pretty much their dark night of the soul and how they came through it and what they're doing today based on their experience. It is a really powerful, powerful book, because you have so many examples of what can happen if you get to a space of just allowing.
Mm-hmm. Yes. it's one of the things that I always say. And it's, so if you ever received an email from me, at the bottom of my email I say, remember, if I can do it, so can you. And I think that is the power in that book. What we, all the women in the book, are sharing is, don't give up, keep going, you can do it. And just listen to all of our stories to get some inspiration.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So, Sandra, if someone wants to work with you or get in touch with you or find out, where you hang out, can you let them know how to get a hold of you?
Yeah, I have a website, so I would absolutely invite them to come to my YouTube channel, because I have, I think, almost 50 free guided sessions. So there's a lot to choose from, a lot to dive into. And when you go onto my YouTube channel, you can kind of get a sense of my energy, how I am when I'm working. Because when I'm talking to you, it might be a different energy than when I'm actually in a deep state of holding space for somebody. So just go to the YouTube channel and see if my energy resonates with you. And one of the things that I love most is getting people together on live retreats. So in 2020, I have 5 retreats planned in different spots in the world. And it's beautiful to bring like-hearted people together. And when we're together in this group container, magic happens. So that's my absolute favorite, to bring people together in the life settings.
Fabulous. Thank you. And for all of you listening, if you enjoyed what you heard, if it piqued something inside of you, if you find yourself like thinking about it, even if you find yourself thinking, they don't know what they're talking about, that can't be true. There's a reason that you're having doubt, something's coming up. So think about the conversation and then just ask yourself, why do you believe it's impossible? Why do you believe it can't be true? Because there are answers in that as well. Every question we have within our mind is an opportunity to go deeper and go within and find out what's holding us back, what's propelling us forward, and the opportunities that we have just being here. So if there's something that we said that you enjoyed or are pensive about, subscribe to this channel. Let others know. Leave us comments. We will gladly get back to you and answer your questions. Anything that we can do to help further your quest for knowledge. I mean, that's why we do the work that we do. So please subscribe, share, let us know how we can support you. In the meantime, this is Nancy Mueller saying ciao for now.